Click. So now I'm recording. Okay, folks, so welcome not to Design 350, but to Design 340. We're starting a new unit. I'm not sure if I got everybody's stuff graded, but many people I got graded already from 3.1 or Unit 3. So now we're going to be talking about roofing technology. And it's really cool, but it's a huge, huge area of interest. So again, we're going to touch so lightly on it that it's hard to say that we're really covering it. But that's okay. We'll talk about many things. And so let's see really quickly. Hopefully you've all looked at these already. Your job, remember, is to look at these things ahead of time so that you know what we're talking about. So here's how to, a series on how to put shingles in, and they're all from GAF. And it's really amazing when you are just going to put a roof on. No, you won't. There's a lot to putting on a roof that seals and keeps water out. And roof design is really important. And we can make it really hard on the roofer, or we can make it really easy on the roofer. Things that make it really hard are stiff, bulky, large types of roof coverings that go on very uneven roofs with lots of protrusions and changes of directions and things sticking out. These asphalt shingles are one of the easiest things to put on and the easiest to seal up and seal around. So I just chose those to show. Okay. But you can watch those. You should watch those. You're supposed to watch those to see what happens and how these things do go on. And look, every time you make a penetration, these nail guns, they're penetrating. They're a place where you can leak. And I'll tell you, I have a house that had a second story put on it years ago, long before I purchased it. And whoever, the design is very interesting. Everything pools in one spot and builds up. And I had a leak. When we bought the place, we noticed there was a leak. And it looked like there was a waterfall. And it was coming through the tiniest hole that you can imagine. Water loves to come through the tiniest holes that you can imagine. And it looks like it's just pouring through. And so we finally got that sealed. We finally found it, got all the little tiny holes sealed up. And so now we don't have that leak anymore. But sealing a roof is really hard. So that's number one thing. Roofs do a number of things, but number one is it keeps out the elements. Okay? Walls keep out wind, roofs keep out wind. They keep out the sun. They keep out water. They keep out cold and keep in heat. Roofs do a lot of cool things, so they're very important. So let's take a look at some of the important parts of roofing. Well, first, let's see if I can make that bigger. How you build the roof has a lot to do with just the architectural style, but also how easy or hard it is to seal. Believe it or not, this flat roof is pretty hard to seal because you get local little pockets where the water just sits and sits and sits. So this is hard to seal. So people do what they call lean-to. Now, that's a pretty steep example of a lean-to, but you'll look at the standards of what the minimum slope ought to be so that your shingles work or built-up asphalt works or something like that. A gable is basically a lean-to in two directions with the ends being flat. And that's pretty easy to build. It's pretty easy to design. And it's pretty easy to seal because there's just one little ridge that causes a problem. And most roof builders are very good at sealing a ridge. So this is really easy to build. And you can seal underneath here, and you can make your eaves stick out so it makes it even easier. It gives you attic space. You can put in attic ventilation. So this is a really common roof style. Sometimes people don't like the looks of it, or there's other reasons that they want to put an additional slope on the end. And then you have something called a hip, which is also pretty easy because now you have a ridge and a ridge and a ridge. It's just a little bit harder to build because structurally you've got one type of structure, which is this hip, and another type of structure, and they're not perfectly even how they match up. Okay, so this is still very, very common, not too hard to build. And so you'll see a lot of this. However, you'll see that these are architecturally pretty boring and plain and not very inventive or interesting looking. So architects like something called a cross gable. And so now they have a gable sticking out. I call it a T-shaped looking building. But now you've got something that's a little bit harder to work with, which is a valley. And that has to get sealed from the water running this way and the water running this way. I should have put this on a Jamboard for you. It would have been a little bit easier. Still not too bad. And then the same thing with a crossed hip. You get valleys in them. A little bit harder to work with. A gambrel is like a gable, but it's two different slopes. And most people think about that when they see a big barn, as an example. But if you're trying to make a living space in this upper area, you'll notice that this gable, you can't stand upright until maybe this tiny little midsection. So the idea behind a gambrel is that from here over to here, you've got a stand-up area. It's a little bit easier to use. And then, of course, with a mansard, it's the same thing, but you have a more inside area. So it's kind of important that you know what those are, the different roof types. And then you should know what the parts of a roof are. So this time I am going to put it on a Jamboard so that I can point at it easier. So my apologies for not having this set already. So these are a lot of the parts of a roof. Okay, so these things that are going across are called rafters. Okay, so these are rafters. Okay, and then there's a rafter underlayment, all this kind of stuff. If the rafters are pre-built and already joined the joists, which is basically the flat pieces that go across the room that you hook the ceiling onto, if the rafters are attached to the joist, you have what's called a truss. Okay, and then a soffit is the area underneath that sort of keeps all of this kind of put together. But you can see there's a ridge there's vent pipes, there's flashing. Flashing is a piece of metal that's sealed on the upside and runs in a way that anything underneath it, you have a nice flat area to seal your shingles onto. So this is, sheathing is flat stuff that goes down, and then you have underlayment, and then you have the actual the other waterproofing, and then you have the actual tile. Now, that's one of the nice things about most roofing products is they are also fire and water resistant, but the main resistance is this underlayment. Okay, so there's a cool little thing there. There's insulation to be thinking about. So let's see what this little thing looks like. And these are all just parts of a roofing system. Okay, we've got walls, now we need a roof. So what you're seeing here is what we usually think of as the roof, which is the asphalt shingle or ceramic tile or sheet metal. But that's the outer layer. Okay, and then there's an underlayment, which is just something that pads that. Okay, and usually the underlayment is waterproof. And then there's a self-adhered membrane. So that's like some Tyvek that gets glued down to it just to seal the joints in the sheathing. The sheathing are like 4 foot by 8 foot sheets of OSB, plywood, CDX, stuff like that you put down because the rafters are 16 to 24 to 36 inches apart, and you need something that you can put lots of nails in and support this weak, flimsy stuff. So you put down sheathing. So I'm going in the opposite order of what you built it in, and then there's rafters and trusses and insulation and more insulation and sealants and oh my gosh, more foam sealant. There's blocking. There's, believe it or not, you want some ventilation. So usually the soffit, there's the eaves with the fascia and the gutter. And then there's usually a board. You look up there and there's usually a board and there's some sort of a screen to keep the rats and the birds and the stuff from coming up. But it's a vent so air can get in. You do want air to circulate here, and you do want air usually to circulate up in this area to get rid of heat. So these are some of the things you'll look at it. Insulation has an R value. The higher the R value, the better it insulates. The better it insulates means that heat, which is just energy, is blocked from migrating from the inside out or the outside in. Okay? And insulation and heat transfer is a big deal in roof design. And we have a program called eQuest that you're going to see at the end of the class, end of the semester, that helps us understand how to design a roof to do the best job of keeping the inside cool and warm. And it is hard. There are no easy, obvious ways. Okay? But this is what a roof might look like. Sheathing. So now we're going inside out. This is what we're talking about, sheathing. I don't think I need a Jamboard on this. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then you can see the underlayment. You just put some felt down and it helps seal these cracks and give you something to glue down onto. Usually between the felt and the underlayment, there's like an additional there's an additional vapor block, which means plastic. And then the roof shingles or ceramic tiles or cement tiles or something like that. Here's where I'm talking that you have ventilated blocking. So in this case, they're not showing a soffit underneath, they're just showing eaves, but they're showing a way for air to get in and out. Sometimes there's vents in here. Sometimes it's at the end of the um, gable. But these would have to be screened. So little bugs and birds and rats and stuff are kept out of your beautiful building. Okay, so another typical way that a roof is built for residential. Here's the underlayment. Let's see what that looks like. This is what I'm talking about. The underlayment, okay, is usually some sort of plastic that's nailed down. Glued down is the best. Ice and water shield. Okay, the big deal is keep water out. Keep water out. Keep water out. Okay. Flashing. Let's look at flashing. This one I think I will. The whole idea behind flashing. See if I can find this. Now this is a typical flashing, but where you see it the biggest is at the end of the run or around windows and around doors, but you sort of saw that already. But look, rain is going to come and hit this chimney. Okay, it's going to rain. And then it's going to drip down. It's going to drip down the back. And then it's going to drip over here. And then it's going to come down here. And then where is it going to go? It's going to try to go underneath. So it's going to go underneath, but you'll see that this flashing is on top of this layer here already. So as it's coming down and getting underneath, it's going to actually drip down onto a layer that you've got here. And this is well sealed. Now, I actually, when I moved into the house, it's got a chimney. And we could see from the pre-inspection report that they had not flashed this area properly, and there was a little bit of dry rot because it had come down the chimney into the house, into the bedroom, and there was dry rot. So they had to replace the dry rot. And what they found was the flashing was okay, but the house was so old that nobody came up and checked on the sealant. This sealant does not last forever. You should check your flashing and your sealant and your caulking. Who's our resident window person? Is it Nick? Nicholas? Is Nicholas on? He's not on with us right now. If we had a window person, they would tell us. You don't just leave your window caulking forever and ever and ever. You actually should re-caulk your windows at some regular basis because that's really where your air goes in and out. So, so this is really important. Flashing is of utmost importance. Ridge, valley, and hip, you just need to know what those are. So we kind of look at those, and there's flashing in a valley, and there's flashing on a ridge, and there's flashing around a chimney, and there's flashing at the bottom of an eave. All of those things have interesting points. Okay, so those are the parts of a roof and the terminology. Yeah, so solar installers. Um, yeah, so solar installers, um, most often, so a solar installer is a combination of somebody who knows electrical and somebody who knows roofing. So you put the solar panel brackets in, and you usually have somebody who knows roofing to do that. And then you hook up the solar panels, and you usually have somebody who knows electrical to do that. So if you've got a roofer that goes, yeah, I put in solar panels, make sure that they work with a good electrical contractor. And you get the electrical contractor, oh yeah, I put in solar panels. You make sure that they work with a good qualified roofer, because man, poking holes in your roof is a disaster. It can be a real problem. So Eric brings up a really good point there about solar and what goes. And guess what, folks? Um, let's talk about this now. We're going to talk about live loads, dead loads, wind loads, types of loads. So this one I am going to snip, because this is really important to know. And eventually, not in this class, but in some class, if you're in our program, you're going to have to calculate these things, or use the calculations and look them up in a table to find out if you're okay. So a building has loads on it. It's pretty amazing what those loads are. But the most common one we talk about first is called a dead load. I mean, it doesn't change. It's there kind of forever. So that's the weight of the building that never changes. And that's a really important load, because the weight of your roof, okay, gets transferred through the joists and through the studs to the foundation. And believe it or not, those joists, if I have a load pushing straight down, it does, if it's not a flat roof, it does push out. So I have an outward force on my walls that I have to account for, and my joists have to take care of that. But I've got a dead load of roof weight that has to be supported by my walls. The weight of my walls has to be supported by my foundation, and the weight of all that has to be supported by the dirt. That's why the size of your foundation and the compaction is important. All that weight has to be held. And so I've got these things called dead loads, and I have to take account for those. But then I've got imposed loads that are live loads. Now, there are some imposed live loads that we separate out, okay, because they depend on where you live instead of how the building is being used. So these imposed loads are how it's being used. People walking around, pieces of equipment that apply loads. Refrigerators become live loads because they change a little bit as you move them. They're not in a fixed location in the house. We have to calculate it separately. Washing machines are totally a live load. They make all these weird loads that go up and down. Weight equipment, people moving around. Those are all imposed or live loads. that you have to account for. Now, those ones don't affect your roof, but they affect the building. Ones that affect the roof, wind load. Believe it or not, when the wind blows sideways, it does weird things. When it pushes sideways, that's meant that compared to the roof, there's an upward part and a part that's, sorry, there's a part that's right along the roof and a part that pushes into the roof. And so your roof has to be able to account for those. And then there's another weird thing. The wind has aerodynamic loads that create lift and download. And it will create a lift on the back side. It can also create a lift underneath the eaves. So these wind loads are all calculated. So Eric says the steeper the pitch, the more the wind load. No, not necessarily. Okay? Because then you get into all sorts of things about separations and eddy currents and weird things on the backside. It depends on where you are and what part of the load equation you're looking at. So these ones, so these ones are all really complex, but there's tables. So if you take our design class 325 or 360, you just look up the area that you live in, and it'll tell you the maximum wind load that you apply depending on the slant of your roof. So it's all very tabulated for you so that you just look it up in tables, fortunately. So, but I'm just helping you understand that the wind loads are important and where you live is important. Snow loads are important. In Sacramento, we don't deal with snow loads, but even as low in elevation as Folsom, you may have some snow loads to deal with. And they get really, really large sometimes. But again, they're in um, they're in tables, and you can do things on your building to work with the snow loads to mitigate them if you desire. Earthquake loads, those are totally dependent on where you live, how you calculate it. Sacramento, even though we're within 50 miles of one of the strongest earthquake zones, because of the soil and the type of land that we live on, we do not have drastic earthquake loads here. They're very low. And then there's special loads that have to do if you have like big pieces of rotating equipment and things like that. So these types of loads, you just need to know these types of loads and how to deal with them in your roof design. Now, you don't need to know how to, you just need to know that they exist. Okay? And so, depending on what type of roof materials and I just want you to look this over. Solar tiles, asphalt shingles, metal roofing, stone coated steel slate, rubber slate. These are all types of roofs. And you should see that they all exist. And you may look into some of these in your research later on, but you may want to deal with them a little bit. Here's a cool comparison chart. I thought I had fixed that one. Darn it. Did I not fix these two? Okay. So here's a whole thing about. So my thing is that this is big and it's complex, and you should study this. You should read. You should at least read through all this stuff and get good at it. What's an ice and water barrier? Man alive. Starter strips. What are those? A ventilation system. Oh my gosh. Redundancy, durability, variety. So these are all things that, as an introduction, you don't have to know a lot about them, but you should be wide read. You should be well read. Um, yeah. Oh yeah. So Eric says, yeah. Earthquake loads on roofs. Big deal. If you're in an earthquake area. Um, And if you are, then your locals all know about it. And then here's a little bit on cool roof design. So this is all just about, where did it go? Cool roofs. Okay, heat islands, cool roofs. There's a lot you can do about it. Now look, the roof is one of the major influences on how much heat goes into your house. But more than anything, it's the area of your roof, the square foot of your roof. It always, now, if you're really wanting to do your design from the very beginning, do the best design you can, do the coolest design you can, take everything into account. But here's how you really save. Make it small. There. Use less stuff. That's it. And you're going to have an opportunity toward the end of this class to use eQuest, which is a Department of Energy program, to figure that out, to prove it to yourself. Use less stuff. But there you go. There's some important stuff about key terminology. So let's see what you're supposed to do about that. So this is 4.1, right? So 4.1, roofing, general. You see it follows our same plan. 4.1 is general, details, research and analysis. So that's, oh my goodness, look at that. Oh, I did it more than once. Now, I didn't specifically give you lifting loads. You're going to have to maybe look that one up. They're part of wind loads. They're a subset of wind loads. Okay? So I've given you some very basics. You're going to have to get online, look this up a little bit. This is supposed to take up the whole box. So you'll want to do a nice job describing these things. Okay, no matter what roof system you use, gable, hip, flat, shed style, slanted, asphalt shingles, ceramic tile, cement tile, any of those. You've got live loads, dead loads, wind loads, lifting. So look, let's say that you've got a residence and it's got asphalt shingles on it, and you're going to do a renovation on that place. Needs a new roof. The shingles were put on 20 years ago. A bunch of them are coming up. They're kind of crummy looking. You've been told that you need a new. You go, man, I'm going to put on a good roof. I'm going to put on ceramic tile. And you look up ceramic tile and you go, man, cost is where I need it to be. I can just actually put it on right over that. It's simple to do. I can just put it right over that, and I'm gold. I don't even have to replace. I'm golden. So what's missing out of that scenario? Can you do that?
Can it handle the load?
Yeah, there's the big question. Okay. Buildings are designed with an expectation of those dead loads. Live loads probably won't change. Wind loads probably won't change. Lifting loads, but this will change. That's why all roofing jobs require a permit so that somebody can look and see, did somebody do that? Did somebody look and see if that added weight? Now, it used to be that solar panels were the same way, that you used to have to do a load analysis with the solar panels. But the racking systems and the way they put them on now and the weight of solar panels have come down so much that I think a lot of places are not requiring that now for solar panels. But they used to make solar panels that would pump water through. So now you've got another, 5,000 pounds of water sitting right on one spot of your roof. Or they were big old heavy things with big old heavy lifters and stuff. I think solar panels are not as important now, but if you make any change to the dead loads on a roof, you need to have it checked out. Okay, and it's always good to do, yeah, put something that traps debris. Yeah, make sure your roofers are good for sure. Um, um, and so also it's always worth it to me to have your inspection to see if your internal structure is still good. So like when I bought the house I live in, we had it done and they found they had used those little tapper plates to put the trusses together, and they didn't do through bolts. And we found like 5 trusses that the little plates had popped off. It was like, oh man. So it was really easy to repair, and we went through and we had them put bolt through plates on so they wouldn't just pop off. And I'm surprised that the city let them do that, because those types of plates, when it gets hot and there's a fire, those things just pop off and your roof collapses. So those little plates are something else. Okay, so there we go. So you want to pay attention to this. Do a nice job. Look up 2 or 3 versions of what these mean. Okay, and then put together a nice description. All right. So that's what happens there. Now let's take a look at our standards. We're going to look at a new portion of standards this time. So there's tons of roofing standards because it's such an important part of the safety of your building. You can imagine, if a window cracks or the frame kind of leaks or there's a little bit of water leaks in there, you can go, okay, yeah, we'll fix that window and that's not a problem. Something goes wrong with your roof, man, that's that's a major part of the system. And so there's bunches of things about it. But one of the most important is fire, and the other is wind. Those are two of the biggest things that can damage roofs: fire and wind. So that's sort of what we're looking at. But here's the residential code, IRC residential code, and you should look this up. So now their class A is something besides what the fire people call class A, although they're interrelated. Oh, no, it is the same. Class A, B, and C, which is the UL 790. So you sort of need to read that UL 790 to be able to tell what they're talking about here. Okay, but so this is and there's weather protection. And this talks about the materials and roof coverings. Oh my God, this is really technical stuff. And we all think that roofers are just a bunch of morons that get out there and in the hot day and slap asphalt down and go bang, 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 bang. Now, roofers often don't even know that they're doing this, but there are many that do. And they can make sure that you're talking about having good roof slopes. Everything that you're doing is good. Roofs are really cool things and they're highly technical. And if you're interested, you could spend your whole life doing roof design. So that hasn't been my whole life, but I really like this idea that these things are here for us to look at. Okay, so you should know about that. Okay, and you should know that National Fire Protection Agency, now NFPA does not make their publications available without paying for them. That just ticks me off. And there was a rule going through that was right to the Supreme Court, almost right there. But in 2016, something happened and the whole thing got dropped. So that rule was to make it illegal for any government agency to require the use of a standard that was not publicly available to the people that were required to use it. And that was based on disparate impact to groups that didn't have the money to do that. So you can imagine if you were a small business owner or you thought that you could do a good job on something and you require the adherence to 20 or 30 standards, and those all call out another 20 or 30 standards, you as a small business person that could perfectly well do that job would have to buy 90 different standards at a cost of $200 or $300 a piece, and you're priced right out of that job. But in 2016, our federal government decided that that was not worth pursuing anymore. So you may wish to, in November, make sure that you do your voting carefully and in consideration, not of rhetoric and people yelling things on the TV and, what's on Instagram and YouTube and all that other kind of stuff, but actually look and see, try to vote, and I'm talking at the local level. You can vote for this stuff at the local level. The state of California has one going through right now, as does the city of Sacramento to require in all of our planning departments that we do not require the use of plans that don't do this. Now, the one that went to the Supreme Court almost was actually a copyright issue where there was um, a website that would purchase all these things, every single one of these standards that they could find, and retype it themselves verbatim and post it so that people could actually read it. And they got nailed, and they did. They violated copyright. But the question was, are you able to, as a group that is supported by public funds, make money off of those standards? And it almost went to the Supreme Court, but then the feds dropped it. So anyway, almost there. So we don't get these. I can't. If you want to get onto the NFPA or somehow find some bootleg copy of the NFPA 203, man, that's a really good standard. And I actually saw it being tested, which was so cool because they had flamethrowers and people in flamethrower suits walking around and flamethrowing on stuff. And it looked like the coolest job ever. And man, I didn't know how you could get a job like that. That was actually at the UL's underwriting laboratories test facility. But UL does a lot of the same thing, but I've been able to find some of their stuff. So you can find a little bit right here. They have a horrible website. So I found for you a couple of links, and I think link number 4 is the best one. Understanding these different fire rating systems. Okay, so you can read through these. See which one. There's another one. One of these had it. But your job, this is the best one right here. Sign me up. No, don't. Where'd it go? How do I get away from that? There it is. Class A, what does it mean? Class B, what does it mean? Class C, what does it mean? Now, you'll find that almost everywhere in the United States now requires a Class A on any inhabitable building. It's just a requirement. Okay? So you can look those up and see what it means. Let's see what it means down here. Oh. There are 3 UL fire ratings, Class A, B, and C, and you're supposed to describe them. And please make it something that somebody could understand. That's the goal here. I'm not going to give you the perfect example, but I've given you what it means right here. I don't need to know what it includes. I want to know what it means. There's the biggest right there. 2 to 4 hours before we. So these are the things that it needs to be able to do. Huh. If you're in an area prone to wildfires, see if it gives us a map. I didn't even look at that before. No, doesn't say. I thought maybe it would give me a map. Okay, so that's what you're supposed to do. What are some roofing systems which normally achieve a Class A ratings? Well, that's in all those things that I just showed you. So you can look that up and find out. Okay? So that's sort of the essence of what we've got here. Hopefully that helps out. Any questions or comments on that? So now on Sunday, the goal is, let's see if there were any announcements. No, I think I got most of your stuff done. Oh, do remember, we're going to be coming up. We're going to be coming up shortly on your oh no, this class doesn't have an in-class demo. Never mind. You might be interested in this. No, I think we're good. I think that's it. So that's what we've got. And then on Thursday, we'll be looking at 4.2. Okay. And then on Sunday, what will you do? Portfolio checkup. It's a checkup only. But guess what? If you turn something in and I can do a checkup, I get to give you feedback. Otherwise, it's just sort of like, okay, what you turn in the following week is what you turn in the following week. Okay? So please, please take your time, get this done as best you can. And we're getting close. We're doing good stuff. You're almost halfway through. And sorry about that. And we're almost to the point where you get to really focus on doing research. Any questions before I end? Let me get to the right one here. Before I end the lab today. So you guys don't have a skill test in this. Well, in this class, since you're constantly presenting the portfolio, you've got that. And then what I ask you to do are these little, very, very simple modules. This is these timed assessment modules. So you can just run through those. So you can just run through those. We've just finished the doors, so we can, let me just do a preview. So this is my version of doing those. They're the advanced materials, the advanced degree, stud, right? That was easy. A 2x4. That was easy. I think window frames have those. I don't remember talking about carbon fired composite mesh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Let's see. For walls, windows, and doors. I don't even remember. Well, I don't think it's MLB because that's Major League Baseball. I think that one was done and that one was done. I don't know. I don't remember. You could always go back and look it up and retake the quiz. So there, let's see what I got. Did I get a grade? Where's my grade? It should give me a grade. Oh, here. See, I did miss one. I got a 3.67. Stud. That's right. That's right. Oh, that is one. Probably Northern Lumber something Association. Okay, so I missed one. If I wanted to go back and get my point, I could. So that, aren't I easy? I pretend like I'm really hard. But I'm looking for that. Oh man, on Pick a Prof, you got to take Prof Schuster. Love his class. or what is it called now? RateMyProfessor.com. Used to be Pick a Prof, and they got sued. I don't know why they got sued, but they had to change their name. I love that site. Okay. Any other good questions? That was a great question. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.